What's up, everybody? Welcome to NWA Nurses with Attitude. Leanne and I want to throw a quick shout out to the listeners. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your support episode after episode, and we hope you guys enjoy this content as much as we love making it. If you guys want, go check us out on our social, Nurses with Attitude on Instagram. That's where you'll find all the updates you need, and also shoot us a message if you want. Enjoy the episode, guys.
Hey,
Yo, yo, yo. What's going on?
not much, man. Our last episode just went live and I was listening to it and it feels so good to, I don't know, like listen to ourselves again. Like, I know that sounds like cynical maybe, but I always listen back to our episodes. Do you listen to them after we record them and post them?
I try to listen to them, and the times that I do, I love it. Like the times that I actually listen to them, I'm like, man, like this is so funny and I have such a good time. But I just have to get myself to listen to it. Like, I love podcasts, and when I watch any podcast, I'm like fully indulged. But I just have to get to that point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, my sister-in-law was like, "What? You listen to yourself?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I don't know. It's like we record, we have this conversation, nothing scripted. And then I totally forget about it. Like I always feel good after we record and I'm like, fuck yeah, that was a good episode, blah, 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 whatever, all excited. But then by the time it comes out, like the week after or whatever, or we haven't recorded in quite a while, I get all excited and I'm like, what did I say in this episode? Did I say something controversial? Like,
Yeah.
Was I somewhat professional? I don't know. Sometimes
that is in my head all the time, Leanne. I'm like, did I say something that's gonna get me in trouble?
Right. And I think that's just like this profession,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Anyways, guys, welcome back. We are back at it. Last record possibly before Christmas. Joe, I want to ask you real quick, what's the weather like in Saskatoon?
Oh, it's fucked. It's so cold.
Bro, it's minus 45 here right now.
Holy shit.
That's what my weather app says. I went out this morning.
It's not that cold.
Dude, it's insane here. We have this like polar vortex coming in from up north, I guess. And so all week it's like overnights are going down to like minus 45. Insane.
That's so cold.
I know my mom flies in from Ontario and she's like, oh my God, it's going to be awful weather. I'm like, yep.
Yeah, it's like -2. It's like -2 in Ottawa right now.
I know. I'm like, it's okay, Mom. We have a Chinook coming on the weekend. You'll be fine.
Man, it's crazy. I thought, because like I lived in Ontario my whole life, and I'm sure you thought this too. I thought like we got the same winter as the rest of Canada. Like it's cold as shit, but like we really only get like 1 month of like a few days of -40 in like Ontario.
Yeah.
And Alberta, like Saskatoon and Alberta, they're kind of almost the same. They were getting like -40, -50 weather in like the beginning of November, end of October. Like it's crazy.
But then we get these days we get what we call Chinooks. I don't know if anyone from Ontario listening has heard of these, but basically a Chinook is where a warm wind comes in and the weather like drastically changes within a matter of like hours, days even. So, it could be like I was saying, this week it's -40, -45, but then come Saturday, like Christmas Eve, it's going to be -6. So like that right there is almost a 40-degree difference within a matter of like, it's going to be 48 hours that the weather's going to turn around. Like it's just crazy.
That's insane. I wonder if that number is getting wider, like the amount of days it takes it to drop back down like so high, I would say.
Yeah.
Like I wonder if that's due to like global warming. Because that doesn't make sense. It's -40, then it's like -4.
I don't know, but I did read a statistic that and they talk about this on the radio stations here a lot, but Calgary actually has one of the highest suicide rates in all of Canada because of the weather fluctuations. Like it really fucks with people apparently.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That went dark. Wow.
Yo,
So that's a stat. Like that's from Canada Stats.
Yeah, there's they talk about it on the radio stations all the time. I read it somewhere. I'll have to post it on the Instagram. I was actually just doing posts from our last week podcast, but yeah, if I can find like the legitimate thing, I'll post it on our Instagram for people to
Holy
see. But
cow.
yeah, I think it's just because the fluctuation, like we don't adapt that quickly. And anyway, yeah, enough
Yeah.
weather talk. But I just like I can't
Oh,
believe how
man.
fucking cold it is.
It's so fucking cold. Well, you know, and I don't want to change the subject completely, but that reminds me, there was a stat of daylight savings that there's more like suicides and more
Yeah.
accidents whenever you change like the time of day.
Right. And I don't know, parts of Canada don't even do daylight savings anymore. And I know that Alberta had talked about it
Mhm.
last year, but we still did it. Like it doesn't even make a difference. What's the
Saskatchewan
point?
doesn't. Saskatchewan doesn't do it, and
Right.
it's
And that's why
weird.
you guys are an hour ahead of us now because we fall back.
Yes,
But in the
exactly.
spring, we're going to be the same time,
The same time.
which is so
And
fucked.
it's weird for Lloydminster because Lloydminster, for those of you who don't know, it's right on the border. So like half of Lloydminster is Saskatchewan, then half of the other half of Lloydminster is Alberta.
Yeah.
So like one half of it's like an hour earlier than the other half. Like it's just weird. It makes no sense. There's no reason for it.
So stupid. Oh my God.
It's like unnecessary complications.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Anyway, guys, welcome back.
Yeah, welcome guys.
Welcome after that crazy intro. Anyway, we're doing an episode today. Joe and I want to talk about the economy, what it's like getting started in life. Maybe talk a little bit about nursing wages. I think there's definitely an unrealistic expectation of what nurses get paid. Like I think society has this like this outlook that nurses make like shit ton of money, and that's just not really the case. And I think more of that's coming to light nowadays after the pandemic. But anyway, guys, don't forget to follow our podcast on Spotify. We are trying to
Yeah.
upload more regular now that Joe's back. Life's just busy this time of year, so we appreciate your patience and thank you for listening.
Yes, yes. That comment about nurses, and there was a few people in our program, and like total respect. They were like, we want to go into nursing to make money, and like the teachers would kind of like laugh at them. And it's true, like nurses, we don't make a lot of money. That said, if you grind and like bust your ass at, like 3 different jobs, you'll make more than I would say like the average person nowadays. But
For
that's like,
sure.
but that's busting your ass and getting all the overtime that's available. That's not
Right.
just because we make so much money, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah, and I would say that's true for any profession though, Joe. Like I think okay, so I think, let me just talk about my personal experience. So when I worked in Ontario as a new grad, LPN, or I should say RPN in Ontario, I was making $28 an hour working in long-term care. And that was a very good wage, in long-term care in Ottawa. That was good. Most places would pay anywhere between, retirement is like 17 up to like 25. So
Yeah.
I thought I was doing pretty good. The thing is $28 an hour. You do a lot of work. So in your mind, you should be paid 34 because of the amount of work and the routines and the expectations that are placed on you. Not to mention all of the fees that come along with being a nurse that I don't think a lot of people realize we have to pay every year.
Oh my gosh.
Yo,
And this time of year too, like this is the worst time
right.
of year for nurses because we're all going broke.
I know. So for anyone who doesn't know, every December, our regulatory nursing body, whatever province you're in, essentially you need to renew your license. So basically, you don't just do school, write a provincial exam, and then you're a nurse. You need to pay for a license, and you need to pay for this license every year. And you need to pay for every province that you want to practice in. So, when I moved from Ontario, I was paying for a license in Ontario and Alberta, which was almost $500 a year just to keep my schooling, my license. Which is just
insane.
fucking ridiculous. Like you put in all this work for 2 years, Joe, and like then you have to pay to maintain. Like for what? I just
I wish they had a license where, because I was in a similar boat. I was living in Alberta. I kept my Ontario licensure because I like there was talks about me going to Northern Ontario to do work. So I kept my Alberta one, my Ontario one. Then I had my Nunavut registration, and then this year I just got my um, Saskatchewan registration. So that was 350 for Saskatchewan, 200 for Nunavut, and those are my
Mhm.
two active registrations right now. And then I haven't renewed them yet, but I think I might do non-practicing from Alberta and Ontario. But if I
Yeah.
did go, that's oh man, that'd be like well over like $1,200 total for all my licenses.
Right. And like just to be clear, we don't receive bonuses at the end of the year in this profession. We don't receive any type of like during the pandemic, we got a top up for like maybe 2 months. That was $1. Like there's no
And all it did was raise our raise us in the tax bracket. We
right.
just got taxed more.
Right. This is the problem. It's like there needs to be some kind of balance. Like I did the same thing, Joe. So recently, actually, I decided, well, this year, I decided to not even renew my Ontario license
So
because I
you just got
figure,
rid of it. Like it's just done.
yeah, I just didn't renew. Like last year, I kept a non practicing and, just so that I didn't have to redo any exams, given if we couldn't buy a house here or whatever the case is, it was kind of like my fallback. But, yeah, I mean, after being in Alberta and buying a home, like I'm obviously not going back to Ontario anytime soon. So what's the point? Like I know the non-practicing is only $50, but it costs me like nothing to rewrite a jurisprudence exam to re-get like to renew my license. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just yeah, decided to let it lapse, which was kind of like scary in a way because I feel like we work so hard for that license and then to
Mm-hmm.
just let it go is really tough, you know?
Yeah, and then like you're right, you live in Alberta, like you have a home, like you
Yeah.
have so much logic being like I'm not gonna go back there. But even with like it's probably the same for me. I'm probably never going back to Ontario. But when I
Mhm.
even think about just getting rid of my license, I want to hoard it. Like I become a hoarder. I'm like, no, like I want it. I want the active
Right?
license.
Yeah, it's like you work so hard for it. Why do you want to give it up? And
Yeah.
I don't know, it's tough. So I
I have a
guess
question for you, Leanne.
yeah, go ahead.
I think what they need to do for nurses, because there's this huge nursing shortage that's been going on for the last like that's been heavily going on for the last 3 years. But even before that, there was a huge nursing shortage, doctor shortage, especially in like rural parts of Canada. Do you think that overtime should not be taxed for nurses?
I don't I don't know because I think that I mean, regardless, all of our income is taxed. I just think that maybe the wages need to so when a facility, let's say, increases a wage for whatever reason, like during COVID, we had that $1 to $2 top up. I don't even remember what it was, but it was basically just taxed away.
Mm-hmm.
So I think facilities or the government or whoever deals with this pay system, the unions and whatever, need to take into account the taxation so that people actually get to see some of this money. Because, Joe, I've had
Mm-hmm.
instances where I make more money at a certain facility. This was back in Ontario, but I actually end up bringing home less because I'm in that next tax bracket, like you say.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, ugh, I'd love to not pay taxes. Obviously, that would be my number one answer. Like, hell yeah, nobody likes to pay the government anything, of course, obviously, but I don't think that's realistic and that's never going to happen. But I definitely think there needs to be some kind of I don't
See,
I don't know,
I think
recognition.
I think it is very realistic because if you think about it, hospitals, let's just use hospitals as an example, that's a provincial funded or organization, and you're providing like a required service. So if someone doesn't show up, sometimes you're actually required to stay by law.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be getting taxed because our provincial system can't use their taxes effectively enough to staff the people that we need in the hospitals. So
Yeah.
I don't think that we should get taxed on overtime. And here's another, and this might be going into some like tricky business, but you know me, Leanne, I love tricky business. Do you know pastors and churches don't have to pay a single dime in taxes? They don't have to pay the government anything at all.
Yeah.
Everything that they get given, they get given. And so like there's guys, like for those of you listening, I'm not bashing the church. I identify as a Christian, okay? I love Jesus. It's true. It's a fact. But a lot of churches, what y'all don't know is these pastors are raking in 400,000-500,000 a year.
Yeah.
Actually, that's actually a lie. Some of them, most of them are racking in $1 million a year and more. But after, like the cost of a building or whatever they're getting at, they're making millions of dollars. Okay. And that's fine. Like, hey, do your grind, make your money. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't think in a society where like you need nurses, and it's not like I truly don't believe anyone could be a nurse. Like you need to have a special skill set. You know what I mean? Like we go to school, we're always continuing our practice. We
Yeah.
maintain standards. Um, there's such a disconnect between like why are like and not even that they make more in general, but like why don't they have to pay taxes? But when I work, like man, when I was working in Ottawa at the long-term care center, I would work double the amount of hours. So I was working like 80, 90 hours a week, and I was making as much as I would make if I just worked my 40 hours.
Yeah.
I was working 90 hours, I was getting paid for 40 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I just like that is so ridiculous, and it to this day it like boils my blood because I'm like society just has like something needs to change. Like that's not okay for any nurse, and especially if you have kids and then you add like other life onto it, they're giving their whole life away and they're not even like the government's literally taking all their money. It's not fair.
Yeah. Something definitely needs to be said, Joe, about um the amount of overtime that nurses work. And you know, I lost my train of thought a little bit, but it's eventually like these staff are going to be burnt out. And we did a whole episode on this. Make sure you guys go back to episode. I'm not sure what number it is, but go back and listen to I think it's a part of the COVID and burnout episode, but people are just trying to make ends meet, and people can't provide good quality care if they can't even care for themselves. And I know we've mentioned this in a lot of episodes, but um yeah, I totally lost my train of thought, Joe.
Honestly, it's true though. Like there was nurses who and this is and the reason why I even bring up should nurses not get taxed on their overtime is that we were so short in our facility. A lot of nurses, and near the end, including myself, we stopped doing overtime because we were like, it makes no sense at all. Like we're
Right.
making like we're losing so much money to do overtime. And like it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to like make money and like grind. And
Yeah.
then it gets like taken away. So you have these great nurses who are putting like their mental health at risk. They're putting their family second, because they want to help and make money, but they can't even make money. So there was just a lot of people who were backing out, and that's why the nursing shortage is such a thing, because you can't have a group of 1 to 2 nurses just doing all the overtime, and even
Yeah.
at that they're not
Yeah.
getting paid for it. Like it's
Right.
volunteer work at that.
Yeah, it is. I think that, well, exactly this, when your overtime hours get taxed off, like you say you were working 80, 90 hours, but only being paid for 40, 50, whatever, like you're essentially volunteering, like you say, that's not right. And then you wonder why, you oh, I want to get into the scheduling too about nursing because, Joe, one thing that I struggled with trying to buy a home was that I didn't have permanent full time. So in order for the bank to lend you money for a mortgage or whatever, you need to show that you have permanent employment. And as many of us are aware, if you're in the nursing field in any type of position, even dental often is like this, you don't work full-time permanent lines. Like you don't work
Yeah.
Monday to Friday 9 to 5. That's not how this works in nursing. We do 4 on, 2 off. Sometimes we do 7 on, 7 off. If you're in travel nursing, you do 3 months on, 3 months off, whatever the case is. It's like there's no Monday to Friday. That doesn't really exist unless you're in a management role. But even if you grind, Joe, even if you're doing 90 hours a week, like there were times when I was working in long-term care and we were trying to be pre-approved and everything, the bank came back to me a couple times and were like, well, like I need a letter from your employer stating that you work this many hours consistently. And I'm like, okay, but my position is technically only part-time. So they can't actually provide me that letter. So then essentially the bank has to go to the underwriters, who are essentially this group of people that, look at your file and determine what you're able to afford, who work for the bank. And thankfully one of them was understanding and like understood the role of nurses, and I guess his wife was a nurse or whatever. But it's so frustrating because we work so hard and we're not set up for any type of success in life with this profession. Like you say, we work overtime hours and it gets taxed away. We can't get a mortgage or whatever. We need co-signers or whatever the case is, and like your own personal, life. It sucks, man. Like, I don't know.
It does. Well, Leanne, I was on the same boat. Like, we just spoke with a mortgage officer at the bank a few months ago, and we showed her like, hey, we're making consistent income. This is how much we're making. And I thought it was great. I was like, oh, we're definitely going to get approved. Like, look at the numbers. Like, the numbers are there. Yeah. I've never held a position in nursing. I've been a nurse since 2019. I've never had a part-time or full-time position. And she was telling me, she's like, all you need is a permanent part-time or permanent full-time. Doesn't matter if you were working there for 2 weeks. If it's permanent, then we could go ahead. And I told her, I said, like, first of all, there's a nursing shortage in like all around the globe. Like, and you see, like look at my taxes. Like, I'm obviously working, but that's just a rule that they have. Now, you will find a job as a nurse most likely, but because of provincial regulations, they can't hire you on as like a part-time or full-time because they only have an allotted amount of funding, and that's why they can't hire you on those positions, and that's why those positions are very, very rare. So essentially when they hire you on as a casual worker, you're a relief worker, meaning when there's no one else, they call you. You will always get called. I've never had a problem with like being a casual. I've never had a problem with not getting the amount of shifts that I want a week. But like Leanne's saying, it doesn't look good on paper, and that's a disconnect between the rest of the world and the profession of nursing.
Absolutely. Like, Joe, there were days where, so I worked a permanent part-time line at the home in Ottawa, and I would put in my availability for full-time hours, sometimes even more than that. And there was not a single day, and I'm not exaggerating, honestly, there was not a single day that I didn't get booked for a shift when I put in my availability. Like, so much so that it came to a point where I would specifically not put in availability on certain days just to have a day off. Like, in a normal job, you would expect like, oh, I don't know, like I'm available maybe Saturday for an extra shift. If you're like work at a grocery store as a cashier, like maybe you just like mention it to your manager and they're like, yeah. And then you probably don't get booked for it. Or maybe you do during busy times of the year, whatever. There is not a chance in hell that you are getting a day off if you put availability in any type of nursing role. Like, there's no way. It's just the world we live in. It's insane.
And it's amazing on one hand because you always have work, but on the other hand, that's why we talk about like taking care of yourself, healthy self-care habits and stuff. Because man, it's fucked. It's hard. It's difficult. I've worked a lot of jobs, but like I did construction, I did the whole nine. Like before, going to nursing, and it's actually funny, Leanne. Some of my guy friends like to look at my hands, be like, man, like for a nurse, you have pretty manly hands. Like, man, like you don't know what nurses do. Like, I know a lot of Filipinos who could like lift like 10 times your body weight.
Yeah, for sure. And like the amount of hand sanitizer we use, of course, we got dry, scaly, cracked skin and knuckles, and I mean that's no secret to anyone who works in the profession. But
And hey, if you see me having a mental breakdown in aisle 6, I'm a nurse. Just get used to
it. I think like all this to say, Joe, is that there's just such a disconnect between the economy, and I know that, we're like specifically keeping this to nursing, and there's a lot more broad issues that occur within the economy, and they say we're headed towards a recession and blah blah blah.
Yeah, just skip over that part.
Yeah, we're just gonna skip over that for the sake of time, but it's just they make it so difficult to get established.
Mm-hmm. And do you know what we don't need as nurses? And it's not making like this, like we're a nursing podcast, which is obviously we're focusing on nurses, but it's not saying nurses are the best profession ever and we're the only profession that matters. But there's a huge disconnect. And hey, like if you want to go out on the street and like smack your pots and pans and say that you appreciate us, great, thanks. Like do whatever you got to do, but that doesn't make a big difference.
No.
And during the pandemic, that was a huge like niche, you know what I mean? Like people would like go on the street and like smack their pots and pans and say we love nurses.
Man, I love that. Like my love language is appreciation for sure. And I just love to feel appreciated. I love to feel thanked. And it makes me feel recognized for the work I was doing. Like
okay.
Nobody saw me going in at 6 a.m. You know what I mean? When everybody was home and like afraid of COVID and whatever, like stay home, don't leave your home. Well, I'm driving to work every day. Like I still need to go to work. Like nothing has changed in my life except my risk has increased. And like a part of it felt good that we had a community come together. But that's just like my personal feeling because like I said,
it's your like love
appreciation
language.
is like my love language. I just like a simple thank you it goes a long way, but it's not enough. Yeah, but it's not enough, like I recognize that, more needs to be done. And, unfortunately, it's the nursing world, I guess, has been kind of turned upside down the last couple of years. But I do think that, the pots and pans and like the thank yous and all that were
nice.
Awesome, but Joe, like nothing has stopped.
And we
that's still don't get exactly pots and pans.
Like it's like that's a great gesture. And I agree with you. Like, hey, it's nice. It's like, oh wow, like thank you, But then like now we're kind of post-COVID and it's like nothing else has changed. Like obviously it's nice to get like appreciation, but and this isn't just for nurses, it's kind of everyone in the healthcare field. It's like, and not only everyone in the healthcare field, but also those who think that they can go to the hospital and get care that they need. Because like, spoiler alert, like you can't. Like it's just it's a complete mess right now in hospitals, and there has to be a change between the economy and the way that we're working the system to show that long-term appreciation for nurses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like this, the pots and pans and the thank you and the social media posts and all that was so wonderful. But we haven't stopped doing what we do every day. But all of that has stopped. And I understand that, the media turns things around very quickly, but I don't know, Joe. Like if I was, it's different for me now personally because I don't work on the floor. So I'm not, mind you, I'm still hustling every day, but it's in a different way.
Yeah.
And I feel very appreciated in the role that I'm in. But if I was still on the floor, I think my outlook would be a little bit different. I think I'd be much more bitter. For sure.
And I think it even gets more difficult in specific, like in like geriatric and like in long-term care homes, because you're not just showing up to work, you actually care for people. Like it's kind of hard for me to explain, but you're working in against the current in the system, but you're doing it because you actually love the residents. Like these residents become part of your family, especially during COVID. Those were all the people you would see. Like they became my best friends on that unit.
Right.
And it's very heartbreaking when you have to live a life and your friends essentially, which are like the residents that you're caring for, you can't give the best care for them because you're not getting taken care of or like appreciated at the place that like you work.
Yeah.
And it just creates like this whole disconnect. Because nursing isn't just a job where you can go in and, uh, do ABC, then your day is done. Like it takes a lot to actually care for someone, and people are going through very hard life transitions, and
Mm-hmm.
you almost indulge yourself in that, and you fully take on all their pain, all their hurt, and you're walking alongside them with life.
Yeah.
And that's a lot for people to take on. For me personally, like that's a lot for me to take on. And I do it with a smile on my face any single day for anybody who comes into
Yeah.
my care. But it just
Mhm.
sucks whenever you get home and then you're like taxed a galore. You're going off of like 6 hours of sleep and 3 coffees. Like it's a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point, Joe. Like, we've said before, nurses aren't just pill pushers. Like, there's more than just like a physical side of care where we're like, still helping people transfer and get dressed and whatever the case is. Like, there's the emotional side of things. There's the social side of things. There's all these different aspects of people that need nourishing. Like, you can't just dress someone and throw them in their wheelchair. Like, they need interaction. They need proper diets. They need, like, there's so much more to caring for people than I think a lot of people realize. And
Mm-hmm.
this is where I say, when I was making 28 bucks an hour, like great, but I was doing the work of $34 an hour. And this is what I mean by that. It's like, sure, I'm passing meds for 20 to 40 people depending on the day. Sure, I'm doing wound dressings on 4 to 5 people that are extensive wounds, but I'm also doing personal care, and I'm also doing the emotional support, and I'm also scheduling appointments for people, and on and on and on. Like, it's just the fact that we have to do overtime and pick up extra hours to just like
Yep.
make ends meet is ridiculous when we are essential to society. Like
Yeah.
Joe mentioned, guys, when the next nurse doesn't come on, we don't just get to leave at 3. We have to wait for someone to relieve us, and if that relief doesn't come, well, you're shit out of luck. Like, you're staying. It's just how it is.
Yep.
Nurses don't get to strike like teachers do,
Nope.
And I think there's a lot that society doesn't know about the nursing profession, and that specifically.
Mm-hmm. And look, when you worked an evening shift, honestly, the worst is the evening shifts when someone doesn't show up, because then you have to do a night. And I don't know if you ever have had to do that, Leanne, but
Oh yeah.
it sucks when someone doesn't come in and you're on the night shift, and at 11:15, like you find out this person isn't coming in. No one's gonna come in for a night shift. Like maybe if you can start calling at like 9 p.m., but at 11:15 at night, like no one's gonna come in, and then you have to work that whole entire night, and then you work the next day too. And
Yeah.
it's brutal. Like it's not just one of those things where it's like, oh, I guess the job isn't gonna get done tonight. Like, we're gonna be a little behind schedule. Like, no,
Yeah.
like people have to get their meds overnight. People
Right.
have to do their stuff. So
Mhm.
it's brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, like you say, you don't just like get to sleep all night. It's like the routine still has to go on. The show
Yeah.
still goes on, Yeah, I think there's like can you hear that, Joe? My fire alarm's going off.
Is that you?
Yeah, it's the batteries are dying in my fire alarm. Maybe we can cut this short. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I think it's me too though, Leanne.
You think so? Oh, there it is again. No,
I think
my
that's
batteries
me.
are dying. You think so?
I think you're hearing me. That's 100, unless our batteries are dying at the same time.
Okay, man, nobody told me how to own a home, okay?
Okay, we found the issue. We're dealing with it. We want to apologize to our listeners. It was the carbon monoxide, so hopefully I can finish this episode. Hopefully there's not carbon monoxide going on.
Oh my gosh, it's still going. It is you. It's not me.
It is me, yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's just cut this episode short this time. Maybe Joe and I can get in another recording this week, but if we don't get to chat before the weekend, then
I'm going to my bedroom.
Merry Christmas. Hopefully Joe makes it to 2023. The carbon monoxide detector's going off. Anyways, guys, don't forget to follow our podcast on Spotify and Nurses with Attitude on Instagram. We got a couple posts going up this evening, so make sure you comment, send us any feedback you have. And Joe, any final last words?
Guys, let us know what you think. There's some controversial topics here, and I want to hear other people talk about it. Like, I want to hear you say you're wrong, or I agree with you, or like, here's another point you didn't mention. Like, hit us with it.
Yeah, and I think, we haven't gotten much feedback through Instagram, and I think maybe people are afraid to comment that. Guys, we want to know. We want to hear your thoughts, your stories, your anything that has to do with nursing. Shoot it our way.
Yes.
We'll bring it up in an upcoming podcast. If you're interested on being a guest on the podcast, let us know. Maybe we can arrange something. But as always, guys, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Peace. Merry Christmas.